Hello again. Long time no see. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for the privilege of speaking the word to you, for all of us. It is good to obey God. You know, next week we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming. But this week, I just want to address the main question that I've gotten over the last 2 weeks, and that is, what was under that canvas? What was the painting? The whole point was that you didn't know what it was. It was like a look at your own thing situation. So stop asking me that. There was nothing special. It was just a random picture that we got at Goodwill. Because it was a cool frame and it cost $3. Okay, now you know, the big surprise. All right, you had to go and ruin it. Okay, yes. Also, I'm sure that people are like, man, he's really getting a collection of stuff up there. And I just want to let you know, in all seriousness, that my intention is not to try to do some kind of special fancy thing. It's just, especially for this part 3, it's like super important that as a teacher, well, see, I've been thinking about this like constantly. And I know where we're headed, and you haven't. So in the time we have, I want to have every possible advantage as a teacher to help you be able to track with me. Okay? I'm not trying to be fancy. So before we start, this being part 3, also this being church, also this being real life, makes it worth saying, Lord, help us. Help us all. Can we do that together? Let's pray. Lord, help us. We trust you. Thank you for your word. The good and perfect guide. Thank you for your Spirit, who makes us able to understand and obey. And thank you for the church, your people, your body. Keep us healthy, Lord. Help us to know and trust. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, so today the title of my message is The Whole Shebang. I actually looked up what the word shebang meant. You ever, there's popular phrases that you use a lot, and then you look it up and you're like, oh, that's not nice. Ever had that experience? Well, apparently this is, I don't know, I just sort of meant the whole thing. So there we go. This is the whole thing. So I do need to do some review. This review will be shorter, but you have to understand the whole thing. You ready for this? When we were saved, those of us that have made the choice to put our faith in the King of Kings, his life and death and resurrection on our behalf, when we were saved, our soul is washed, clean, and redeemed, and we are given dignity by being part of his family, and we are given value because of his blood, the payment for us. Yes, that's great. But we are not removed from our sin. We still have a sinful mind and a sinful heart and a sinful physical body living in a sinful world. We're still helpless. We are pure-souled, helpless children, right? And that leaves us at a place where if we look correctly at ourselves, we have to identify, I still need help. Do you remember this? I know it was a long time ago, okay? But here's the equally as good of news as our salvation, is that at salvation, we were also given a lifeline, the living vine of Christ. And lastly, because of him, lasting change and freedom is now possible. We have access to it. And as believers, this was last week, our only responsibility is to hold on to the vine. And John 15:5, remain there. That's our purpose. Remain in him. And as we hold on, the vine grows into us and us into it. And the nutrients of Christ begin to flow into us. And we have now access to all the resources we need that we didn't before. And out of an abundance of his nature, the connected nature of the vine, of Christ himself, we always get more than we need. And what do we call the excess of nutrients in a tree? It comes out as fruit. The very fruit of the Spirit that we find in Galatians, the result of connection, is the overproduction of spiritual life, which brings love and joy and peace and patience and blah, blah, blah. Sorry, the rest are important too. I just don't have time. Blah, blah, blah is not technically one of the fruit. Okay. And this is how it works. He transforms us as he pulls us out of the pit. Reality check here for a second. If this is our Christian lives, then it brings us to the question, where is all of this transformation? Right? If here's the access, all we need for fruit, he lifts us. Where is said transformation? Why is it not happening more? That's not a judgment question. That's a real life question that I can ask about myself and every one of us. What holds us back from clinging to him, living in him, and experiencing the process of him lifting us to freedom? Well, it starts by the fact that we've been deceived by the sin that still enslaves us. Like Paul said, still a slave, even after salvation. We've been deceived. We live in a fantasy world, a literal bubble that's produced by our own nature, our sin nature, and the fallen world we live in. It acts like a shield to keep us from the vine, even though we have the vine to keep us from the vine. And a lot of us fall into two different camps, these two different fantasy worlds. We talked about this last week. The first one is defined by the fact that as a believer, you are in denial. You think of Christian life as neutral ground. You're not aware of much danger, and life doesn't feel like a deep, dark pit. You're confident that you are saved, and you're grateful for that salvation, but you have not yet been convinced that that has much bearing on your daily lifestyle. Sin is a path this way. Goodness is a path this way. God is the fireman if we let it get out of hand. We're grateful for him for that. But the denial Christian will often be defined by not saying, but living, I'll make choices, and because I'm a Christian, you actually believe the lie that God will make it all turn out good for me. That's denial. The other camp, the other place believers often end up in, the other fantasy that we end up living, is the climber. The climber is this is how you see your life. Your whole life is about be good, don't sin. From early childhood, this has been not only your training, but your life experience. Be good, don't sin. Be good, don't sin. And that has become to define the inner and outer you. Christian life is about trying really hard. Nearly all your relationship with God is based on your spiritual fitness and evaluation of yourself. The gear selection, the things, the Christian stuff that you listen to and watch and participate in. Goal setting for the future and work. And climbers are all too familiar with the pump up spiritual motivation of, yes, let's do it. And also the crushing guilt of not making it any further than you made it previously. Because you see yourself and life and church and God within the fantasy of climbing. The truth is that both are thinking incorrectly. Do you remember this? Anybody remember this? Both are thinking incorrectly. And our thinking acts like that shield to keep us from the vine. It's just right here. It's just so close. And as believers, because of the Spirit, we all are vaguely aware of this, right? Has anyone ever felt this way? There's just right there. There's just something. I could be connected. I feel it. I feel the pull of that connected life calling me, but I'm just not there yet. Because until we have the right view of ourselves, we just can't change, and the climber and the denial Christian are both thinking incorrectly. But the cool thing is that reality shatters those fake worlds that we've set up, or sin has set up, to keep us from knowing God. And this is reality. Even after salvation, I need help. I am not good. My mind and my emotions cannot be trusted. My heart is always prone to rebellion. And when it comes to wisdom, I'm an empty cup, still an empty cup. And I can't change myself. That's the reality of me and you. And when we understand and live in the reality of myself, when I'm looking and knowing myself clearly, then we are finally able to see clearly the reality of the vine. The idea and application of spiritual life actually become clear to us. It's no longer vague or far off or confusing or religionized. And this is the reality of our spiritual life. This is vine life right here, like we ended last week. Only God can help me. I am designed by God to need God every day. It is not a result of sin that we need help. It is in our nature to need God because He is in fact God. And that is good. It's good that I can't climb. His way, this is part of only God can help me, is remembering that His way is the only viable option. Man, we don't like that, myself included. My nature rebels against the fact that God has set the end and the means. His way is the only viable option. It is complete relationship or failure. You can't half climb. That's just generally known, right? How would it even look? That's like jumping, I guess. That's dumb. Moving on. Only God can help me. The true purpose of my life, is to cling to Him. Connected is what I crave. Connected is what brings fruit together. The purpose of my existence on earth is to live vine life. That's cool. That's really cool. Because now we have the right view of ourselves, and we have the right view of the vine. But this is crucial, okay, because we're not done yet. All right, so no closing prayers quite yet. Hang in there. Because when we look at it, let's overview, okay? I don't need help. No matter how that sounds or looks in your life, that's denial. I need help, so I'll try to help myself. No matter how that sounds or looks like in your life, that's climbing. I need help. I can't help myself. Only God can help me. You know what that is? That's standing right next to the vine, thinking rightly about me and the vine. That's not the end goal, right? Okay? Because clinging to the vine takes two truths and an action. Clinging to the vine takes two truths and an action. And I hope many of you are thinking a really good question, and have been over the last several days, hopefully. And that is, what do I have to do to hold on? I understand rejection, obviously. I understand climbing, but what do I have to do to cling? Excuse me. If I don't have the strength to obey Him on my own, and I can't produce lasting change in myself without Him, then what is my part? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. There is one thing. There is one thing that God has given humanity the ability to do. And we see it from the very beginning. Let's go back to the simplicity of Eden. There is no sin nature. Perfect human connection with ultimate and powerful God. Let me paraphrase. The serpent says to Eve, "Really? Did God really say that if you can't eat any fruit from the garden?" And Eve is like, "Well, of course we can eat the fruit, but He just said that we can't eat from that one tree or we'll die." And the serpent said, "You won't die. It'll actually make you wise. You will be like God, and you will know and understand both good, which you already do, and evil. Hey. You'll be equals with God. You'll have all the understanding that He does. And she was convinced. Before Eve physically took hold of the fruit in an act of disobedience, she was presented with an alternate view of her reality. Was it true? Anyone? No. Yes, she was about to know evil. But she wasn't going to be like God. It was not true. She was presented with an alternate version of reality. And Eve weighed the information against what God had said. She weighed it against what God had said, and she made a choice to not trust God. She made a choice to not trust God. And the fall of man happened before the physical boundary was crossed, before Eve ever touched the fruit. It happened in Eve's heart when she made her choice to not trust God. That right there. That is it. This is the one part of our spiritual process that we are in control of. By God's gift of free will, you understand the only reason we can do that is because He has offered us the gift of free will. By His gift of free will, before every act of obedience or disobedience, we are all confronted with that same decision. Will I choose to trust God or not? How can I make this any more profound? Your part of holding on to Christ, the vine, begins and ends with your choice to trust God. The end. Your part of clinging to the vine begins and ends with your choice to trust God. When the choice is, I trust God because it makes sense. Or I trust God, I choose to trust God because I've made the same right choice 1,000 times before. Or when I choose to trust God because His way does match my experience. Or when I choose to trust God, even in the face of appealing and persuasive counter-arguments. Or even when I don't understand. Or even when it goes against everything that I feel or think. Or even when it goes against my own experience. When the choice is, I trust God, that is when we connect ourselves to the vine. That is the choice that puts our hands right here so that He can do the lifting. The choice is critical. This is where you have to engage your mind here to understand that what I'm saying is that this choice to trust, this trust is a heart condition. Okay? It is a spiritual state. And the act of grabbing the fruit or deleting the time-wasting app or not saying something mean or any other obedience or disobedience, the choice begins with choosing to trust God or not. That's it. The choice. Do I trust God? That is what He has given to us, His people. So, let's check this out, okay? Here it is, the whole shebang. This is our formula. Will you put that up on the screen and then just leave it up here? You ready for this? Ta-da! I need help. Only God can help me. So I choose to trust God equals, say it, connected. What does connected mean? How many scriptures do we know, do we love, do we read, do we struggle to understand because they're describing connected? This is what I mean. Vine life. changed. The transformation that comes from a new mind that Romans talks about. The wisdom of the Spirit that James says that our holy God promises to us. The fact of sin falling away. The bearing of fruit. The growth of self-control. And what our Holy Scripture defines as life that is actually life. That is what connected is. That's what he promises. That lifting is not some sort of elevation to a higher spiritual plane of holiness, like some sort of, ooh. This is all the things that he promises that his Spirit cannot help but produce in us. When we're connected, this is it. I need help. Only God can help me. So I choose to trust God. Equals connected. This formula is actually the foundation of our entire Christian lifestyle. And as an aside, this is just like not necessarily relevant to my lesson, but I think it's very interesting. I think that every sinful human condition can be seen as a result of the failure of one of these 3 points. Check this out. I don't need help. Whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, that's denial. I need help, but I don't want it. Rebellion. I need help, and the world will help me. Or, I need help, but I just don't trust God's plan. That's humanism. I'm the captain. I need help, but I can help myself. That's religion. In systems and processes do I trust. Or how about this one? I needed help. God helped me. So now I've got this. But I'm really glad you're saying it to the youth. That's idolatry. Self-worship. But, okay, let's just set that aside for a second. That's like, ooh, there's a lot there that's really interesting. But let's get back to this. If all the parts are in place, contained in this little formula is the understanding and the action required to live an abundant life. That's special to me. Does anyone else feel like that's kind of a cool thought? This is really neat. And the great thing about a formula like this is that it's like a truth multivitamin. You know what I mean? There's tons of really important stuff in here, but they're all combined and condensed into like a usable size. So like they're like ready to be practically applied to daily life. It's not like I'm in a situation, let me pull out and read the whole Bible. You know what I mean? That just might not be practical. But like if you take that, some of you are like, that's what I do. Whoa, it's intense. If you take that little thing and think of it like that, like this is a lot of truth in there. This is a right view of myself, a right view of God, and the right view forward, plus remembering the result. It's all there. And personally, I think this is so usable. It has been in my life to an extreme. And also, when we look at this little formula, it's actually also really user-friendly. It really is. It might not seem like it just looking at this right now. But does anybody start to see, when you look at that, how it kind of applies to yourself? Anybody? Now listen, before we start to use this formula, at the end, we'll kind of talk a little bit about what we would actually do with this today. But before we start to use it, there are two really important things that we need to understand. I hate to call them rules. Rules, let's call them laws. Like, think of them as like scientific laws. You know what I mean? It's like this always is the case. It's not like don't drive 65. It's like, not like at the age 65. I was thinking the speed limit. Your choice. It's more like a scientific law. Two things that we need to know that always hold true. Let me just say this. As a person on the stage, this is hugely important. And I really need you to do your very best to track with me. Because it's easy to look at something, but when you say, I want to understand it, that takes our mind to the next level. So please trust me. What I'm about to say is worth understanding. I have done everything I can to make this timely, you know. I'm just going to leave this up there. And remember that the two laws that I'm about to talk about have to be in our understanding if we're going to do this, if we're going to be able to use this correctly. You got this? We ready? Yes? Anyone still awake? It's so warm in here. I feel like I'm literally in a hot tub, which would make this a really weird sermon. Okay. First law, all right? Trusting God takes two hands. Trusting God takes two hands. Let me explain. I think that we all want to and have tried to trust God without all of the grabbing. Have you ever thought, can't I just trust my way to you? Can I just do the actions of obedience and trust and just I can just get that trust going, skip to the trust part, and then we can make some movement happen here, okay? Can't I just trust my way to you by doing the right thing? And if I'm doing it, doesn't that mean I trust you? And we're all about the action. We always jump to the action. We always jump to the action. I'd like to remember week 1 when we said God doesn't look at the things men look at. Man looks at the outward appearance of things, but God looks at the heart. And this is what I mean by trusting takes two hands. The heart condition of trust can only come from accepting both I need help and only God can help me. Vine life trusting can only result from two hands. Do you understand? You have to accept, I need help and only God can help me. No one can cling to him one-handed. It has to be both hands. And I don't mean, I'm not just once, I mean constantly. We cannot cling to him. We cannot be transformed if ever we only have one hand on the vine. It always has to be both. If I'm ever missing one ingredient, heart trust just can't happen. Let me explain why. Without the heart action, even the outward actions that are technically correct, what do we call them? Climbing. Without both hands, the result cannot be trust. It can't be trust. And therefore, even when we try without both hands, without I need help and God can help me, the result is not transformation. Because inside, we're not being transformed. Let me explain it. Let me do it like this. If I lose, okay, I'm trusting, I need help, only God can help me. If I lose, I need help. I can't trust God by just doing the right thing because I need help. I still am not capable of clinging on my own. It will not work. I can't trust God and my feelings because I need help. And my heart is still, as a believer, is deceitful. If I lose, I need help. I can't trust God and my own wisdom because I'm an empty cup. Life experience is not enough. This cannot result in heart trust. Okay, how about this one? Let's put I need help back on. I'll step over this way so I don't trip or pull this whole thing down. And let's say if I lose, only God can help me. At any point, if I lose, forget, or reject that only God can help me, I can't trust God because I've forgotten that I need him. I can't trust God because I'm just too busy doing things my own way. Anybody ever feel that way other than me? Where after a while you realize that you've just been doing stuff. I can't trust God. because I have decided, because I'm not trusting that only God can help me, I've decided that first I'm going to try some other avenues to reach the same end and see where that gets me. That is not, even when I do the right thing, it is not leading to connected. Because trusting God always takes two hands. And Christians are really guilty of throwing around the phrase, just trust God. You know what I mean? This is like our go-to advice. You're in a hard situation. Well, just trust God. Just trust God. Just trust God. Lord, please help them to trust God. And we assume, I think, that the lacking motivation is the problem. All right? In myself and in other people. If there's an issue with clinging vine life, it's because we don't want it enough. And so we just say, just trust God. But I'd like to think, I think that this is a better question to ask yourself and each other. Are both your hands on the vine? In this situation, with your daughter, are both hands on the vine? Are both hands on the vine? This is what we need to be urging each other to think about, because without two hands, going to the trust is impossible. We didn't even make it that far. We can't trust God. I can't trust God and myself, and I can't trust God. What's the other one? Without knowing who He is. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is exciting to me. All right. Law number 1. Trusting God takes two hands. Law number 2. Still with me at all? Feel like I'm being a little confusing? Get over it. Law number 2. These build on each other. They're not separate. They work together, much like the laws of science. Law number 2 is this. Connected life is the result of all three parts. Connected life is the result of all three parts. Let me put this up here, okay? This is just a way that I can say more in less time. So I'm just going to put this up here and move it over this way. Got it? Okay, so this is essentially what you have on the screen, all right? So this is what we have. Knowing that I need help, plus knowing that only God can help me, plus choosing to trust Him equals connected. This is so important. The first thing we have to say is that I need help, plus only God can help me, so I choose to trust Him. This is not the end result. We sometimes stop and be like, I trust Him is the end goal. No! I trust Him is not the end goal. What's the end goal? Say it. Connected is the end goal. Vine life, changed, renewed mind, life that's truly life, wisdom from the Spirit, sin falling away. And connected takes 2 parts knowledge and 1 part choice. Okay? So the first one means, our first law is that this minus this cannot equal trust. We got that? This minus this cannot equal trust. The first 2 knowledge have to be there in order for it to be heart trust. We got that? But you have to have all 3 of these for it to be vine connected life. That's the most confusing thing I'm going to say. So if you got that part, you're good. We good? It has to be the whole formula. It's a lot like math, which is the worst. Trying, listen to this sentence, trying to live connected without all 3 always ends in effort and then heartbreak. Trying. And this is where we all end up kind of in this spot. Because we try to live connected without one of these. And it never works. And it's not always because of outward, straight up rebellion. I don't know that many believers, some maybe, but I don't know that many believers that are like, I don't need help. Or, I don't trust God. That's outward rebellion. I think most of the time, or it's not from a place of rebellion or rejection, our nature is just always prone to forget. Amen to that. Or be comfortable. And we are being pulled toward our base self, right? And that pull makes us forget that you cannot be connected without knowing that I need help and knowing that God can help me and choosing to trust Him on the heart level. That is the only connected life. Now listen, I want to demonstrate this, and this is a reason, because this is where we spend most of our lives demonstrating why this has to be in place by trying all of the other possible combinations. Anybody feel that way? So what I want to do is I want to demonstrate this by taking away one part and seeing where it actually ends. It doesn't end in connected. It always looks like something else. You got it? So we're just going to run some alternatives and see where they lead. Let's try this one, okay? Let's start with I need help plus choosing to trust God and see if it leads to connection. Look at that for a second. Do you see any possible way that that will lead to abundant vine life? I need help, plus I trust you, does not equal connected because we've forgotten God. And so here's the outcome. Let's look at the result. Think about this in your own life. This person who's trying to live this way, your need, because you do recognize need, motivates blind trust because you're missing a piece, an illuminating of who God is. I need help without knowing who God is, so I'm just going to try to conjure up this trust. Your need motivates blind trust with no direction or no foundation. And this person ends up trying to obey without knowing what God actually says. And this is the foolish man who built his house on sand right here for sure. You know that story? This is the picture of what he said. I'm just going to build some stuff and hope for the best. And I'd like to say, because that guy does not get enough credit, that guy deserves a lot of credit because building a house is hard. And it's really expensive. And it takes a lot of time. But the moral of that story is the disaster of not understanding cost him dearly. That's the whole point, because he's the one that's standing next to his broken house and being like, I took off a whole year of work for this? The disaster of not understanding cost him. Matthew 7:24, at the very beginning of that parable, Jesus said, anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise, like a person who builds a house on solid rock. A lot of times as teachers, we listen to that verse because there's two things in there, and we say, anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it. Now listen, you've got to follow it. We have to obey. But I'd like to point out here that the first part is also pretty important. You actually have to listen to the teaching. This is a life that does not stop to listen to the teaching. We do not know who God actually is or how God can actually says he will help me. And the result of that is that until you know God, you can't be connected. Proverbs 14:8 says the prudent understand where they're going. Not just like, I need help, so God. You understand what I'm saying? Until you know God, you can't be connected. Here's another outcome of this. Your need motivates blind trust, like the first one, but without knowing what God actually says, you end up listening to the wrong teacher. I feel a need. So quick, tell me what to do. And someone that sounds good tells you what to do, and you yell, thank you, as you run into a blazing building. And this is where we, not knowing who God is and what he actually says, leaves us at a place where we say, where we learn, that many, many people speak falsely in his name. And until you know what God actually says, how can you be connected? Because Proverbs 14:15 says, only simpletons believe everything they're told, but the prudent consider carefully their steps. And this is really interesting because one of the great things about knowing God, about God himself, any of my Atlas guys here, we know the way. He has shown us what is right and what the Lord requires. All right, let's do another one. You see what we're doing here? We're looking at the alternate outcomes of not having the whole formula. Next one, okay, let's go with this. I need, where are we at here? Oops, I just skipped that. Here we go. Let's forget for an afternoon or a day or a couple of years who we are. God can help me, so I trust him, does not equal connected. Because you've forgotten you. The equation falls apart. Not knowing me, plus knowing that God can help me, plus trying to choose to trust him is not vine-connected life. Let's look at the results of that. Because without recognizing your need, acknowledging God and who he is can only result, not in connection, but let's call it uneasy trust. You know what I mean by that? Does anybody have a spouse who sits in the passenger seat just gripping the chair with like white knuckles? No, nobody but me? And then you know what it is. Basically, everything about Abby is saying, technically, I trust you. Right? Car. There's a blue van, stop sign. I'm just making sure I trust you. You know what I mean? It's like that, yeah, we're fine, everything's fine. You know what I mean? Guys, without recognizing our need, acknowledging God is God, and truthfully, this is church people. This often, almost always is people that grew up in church or in ministry families or surrounded by faith, in quotes. White knuckling the armrest. Technically, I trust you. I'm here, but I don't like it. I'm here, but it doesn't feel safe. It feels like work. And everything feels like a threat to the person of uneasy trust. Like, something comes into our life or our culture or our government, and we feel overwhelmed by it. The thought of college or the way people talk or et cetera, it all feels like it's a car. Because we have an uneasy trust for God that certainly does not result in connection life. It results in never experiencing the relational elements of vine living. You experience the knowledge, the technical elements, but the relational elements never happen. You never experience the hair down, music loud, sunny day drive with someone that you love. Because you've forgotten that I still need him. And we need to remember that it is all or nothing. You are not good enough to even be a back seat driver in your own life. Until you remember you will not be connected. And all your best effort is nothing more than climbing. The result of this is not connected, it's climbing. And Proverbs 1:7 says, fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge. Fearing God is nothing more than recognizing the difference between you and God. God is not a better driver. He's the only driver. And until you remember you, even for that day, even for Monday, it's not vine living. There's another result of this formula that often plays out. And I think this one also comes, I think, with age. I think it starts with what we just said, uneasy trust. And I think sometimes as believers age, another result of trying to live this way is that without recognizing your knowledge of God, without recognizing your need for God, your acknowledgement of God motivates partial trust. I know God can help me, but I'm going to need a thorough convincing before I really go all in on trusting him with this, before I hand over the reins. Let's call this down payment trust. I put myself forward in obedience. I have tried, but now your part, God, is to make me understand. Because we're partners here. That's what Vine Life is, right? We're partners. And I did my part. Now your part is to help me know why, or help me know when, or help me know how. Go ahead, I'm waiting. Until you remember you, the result will never be connection. Because you need a good dose of Job. For God to say, who do you think you are? That I need to prove myself completely trustworthy. Proverbs 20:24. The Lord directs our steps. So why try to understand everything along the way? This does not result in connected. All right, let's do one more. You guys still with me? Look at that. I even got these little magnets. Because if I tried to write them, people would not be able to read it. All right, let's do the last one. This one might seem like fairly obvious here, but knowing that I need help and knowing that only God can help me does not result in connected life. What does it result in? Stalled. And I'm not downplaying that. Like we all have lived this way. This is another symptom of churchianity, okay? Churchianity 101. We think of learning like we think of a puzzle. Any puzzle people here? You guys like puzzles, puzzlers? I don't like puzzles. Anyway, they're just too temporary. Here's the deal. So you sit down, you figure it all out, and everybody knows you start to see the puzzle, the picture come into play. Little pieces of knowledge or facts become concepts, and then we start to feel like we see the end product. And what do you do when you get done a puzzle? You say, there it is. All but that one piece. We say, there it is, and then what do puzzle people do? They take it all apart. And they put it away. Learning is not like a puzzle. And the danger of an interesting sounding series or a memorable analogy is that we are all too eager to cry, Eureka, and case closed at the same time. Knowing is not enough. Honestly, I think learning is a lot more like a pipe bender. Has anyone ever used one of these? All right, so this is to bend like copper gas lines, like propane for an oven or et cetera. This is a weirdly confusing tool. Every time I pull this out to use it, it's like once you get it, it's like, oh, that was so dumb. Why did I take so long to get that? But I have distinct memories of like sitting under my sister's kitchen counter, just like being like, me and Dad being like, where does it go in? Like if you turn, does it go this way? Here's the deal about bending copper pipes. You actually have to have the tension, pressure on all sides of it. If you just try to bend a copper pipe, what happens? It kinks. That's bad, okay? You actually have to have pressure. You have to have the whole thing enclosed. So when you actually get it, here's the thing about the pipe bender. When I'm sitting there and being like, oh, there it is. It slides right in there. And then, wow. Nice. Then what do? Bend the pipe, right? The whole point of understanding is to get back to plumbing. That's the whole point, right? You take that moment and you're like, and then you hook up the gas line. It's not like a puzzle, because learning is not enough. It is the beginning, and understanding is not the end game. And this, just like, what does the Bible say that knowledge does without this? Puffs up. It makes really fat, lazy Christians who think they're connected while they're just looking down on everyone else. Once we understand, we get back to plumbing so that the fuel can get flowing. And James 4:17 tells us that, remember, it is a sin to know what is right to do and then not do it. None of them lead to connected, but this one. Because when I know that I need help, I'm not attempting my own way. I'm at a right place with my understanding of myself, plus knowing that only God can help me, plus saying the only possible result of actually knowing these two is that choosing to trust Him will follow. And knowing and choosing equals connected. And it just happens. When they're all there, the striving stops and the vine living starts. And that's just really cool. All right, but before we run out of time, let's talk about how to actually use this formula. There's two ways that I want to offer you, okay? The first is, this is a tool to remember the big picture. Outside of any particular specific situation, to say this as a creed. To think it in the morning. I need help. I am not good. My heart is always rebellious. When it comes to wisdom, I'm an empty cup, and I still can't change myself. Only God can help me. I'm designed by God to need Him every day. His way is the only viable option. And the true purpose of my life is to cling to Him. So I choose to trust Him. Equals vine life. Everything I just said is in your bulletin. Say it to yourself. You know what the result of that is? Like saying that? Humility. And also gratitude. Because it's really kind of beautiful to have your eyes open and to be able to look around. So use it as the big picture. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Here's another one. We can actually use this as a tool to process the little picture. I don't know if that makes sense, but it just seems like the opposite of the little big picture. Little tiny picture. You know, like the ones that they get to throw it. Never mind. Skip past that. This can also be a tool to process the little picture. You can plug in your own stuff to this formula. And there's no particular words. It doesn't have to be all spelled out. But in any situation, if we take a minute to remember the whole truth about the little picture, we benefit from this. I want to do a demonstration, and then this will just be yours to do whatever you want with. Okay, let's go through 3 different ones. And I'm going to do this kind of quickly, all right? Let's take, for instance, sexuality and temptation. How do we apply this? Because that's where we are. How do we apply this formula? Well, first thing is, my natural reaction is to think that natural is right, just like everybody. So here's my formula for sexuality and temptation. I need help. My heart is always ready to believe that I'm not in danger from temptation anymore. My mind is always prone to interpret bad as good, and I can't navigate this area on my own. Only God can help me. I need Him in my sexuality, and that's good. Look in your bulletin as I go through this. His way is, now listen, this is where I know it. I know it because I know Him, His Word. So when I get to the point where I remember His way is, in sexuality and temptation, is this: run from evil content and confess quickly. There is no other way. His way is my only viable option. And lastly, fruit will come from sticking together in this area. So I trust Him. And the result is we're connected. You see how that played out? Here's another one. Let's talk about alcohol. Our natural reaction is to think that everything is under control. So let's stop in the little picture and plug in alcohol. I need help. I feel like I just want to relax. But knowing my heart, there could be more to it. I think I can manage this or stop anytime. But my heart cannot be trusted. I want to be balanced, but I can't on my own. Only God can help me. I need Him to be self-controlled, and that's good. And His way is the hard line, don't be drunk. The benefit line, not everything is beneficial. And the health line, my physical body is His temple, and there is no other way. And trusting Him in this, blessing will come from making Him my drinking partner. So I choose to trust God. That's literally our entire apologetic for alcohol. If you just say, God's way is best, what does that result in? Either climbing or denial. It's got to be the whole thing. Do we understand that? Let's do one that's even more generic. Someone has asked you for advice. What's our natural reaction? Well, it's either one or the other. Finally, they asked me. Or, oh no, why'd they ask me? One or the other, generally. Either way, in that moment, what's the truth? I need help. I don't have wisdom on my own. I can't necessarily trust my experiences. Even when I want to help, on my own, I can't. Only God can help me, and I need help to help people, and that's good. His way is, this is where before you give advice, you had better know what His way is. What is His way for the situation that has been presented to you? And then remembering that for you and for them, His way is the only way. And trusting Him in this will bring both you and the person you're advising fruit. So I choose to trust you, God. What's the result of that kind of advice? Renewed mind, repentance, restoration, peace. You see it? Anybody have one? We'll go through them. Big picture and little picture. So here's my series conclusion. All right? And then we'll be done. Remember the pipe bender. Okay? Knowing ropes and boards and pictures and words, it's not the end goal. It's time to get plumbing. Because that's what brings vine-connected life, to get the power flowing. I need help. Only God can help me. So I choose to trust Him. Equals connected. Law number 1. Choosing to trust Him can only result from both hands. Trusting God takes both hands. And connected is the result of all three. So examine any situation in your past as an example, and you will clearly be able to see which one was missing that made you keep failing or keep climbing or keep denying. Take a look at it. Figure out how to use it, and for God's sake and your own, do something with it. Let's pray. Sovereign Lord, I'm thrilled that you are God. Thank you for reminding us that we need help. Thank you not only that you can help us, but that you've revealed all we need to be helped. And as for me and my family, we choose to trust you. And thank you that you take care of the rest. Do your thing, Lord. In your name, amen. Thanks, guys.